Hello everyone, today we are going to visit a place where knowledge piled so high it might have needed its own zip code if zip codes had been invented yet. You're walking into the ancient Library of Alexandria. And yes, it's every bit as dramatic, mysterious, and possibly doomed as you've heard. So when you're comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the marble floor, the sea breeze sneaking through the open colonnades, bringing with it the scent of salt, ink, and ambition. The Library of Alexandria looms before you, not just a building, but a universe. One built with scrolls instead of stars. Every surface is lined with papyrus. Rows of shelves stretch into rooms you can't even see the end of, each cradling hundreds, maybe thousands of works written in languages you don't understand. And that's fine, because the scribes here, they do. They speak Greek, Egyptian, Sanskrit, Hebrew, Aramaic, Phoenician, and about 3 dialects of stuff you're pretty sure was made up on a dare. You're not a scholar, not really, but you pretend well enough. You keep your hands behind your back, nod sagely at passing astronomers, and occasionally mutter something like, "Interesting use of the Doric subjunctive," even though you don't know what that means. The library isn't just a building. It's part of the Mousseon, a research institute dedicated to the muses goddesses of art and science. Historians agree this was the first known research university in the world, complete with lecture halls, botanical gardens, and enough brainpower to melt marble. If you're thinking Hogwarts but with more geometry and fewer owls, you're not far off. You pass Theon, who's trying to chart planetary motion with nothing but sand and a very dramatic beard. Farther down the hall, Eratosthenes is busy calculating the Earth's circumference using shadows and sticks, because apparently trigonometry and sunbeams are his idea of a good time. And over by the inner court, a gang of students is arguing whether Homer wrote both the Iliad and the Odyssey, or if he was just the ancient Greek version of a really good ghostwriter. Welcome to Alexandria. Arguments like that happen before breakfast. The scribes? Oh, they're everywhere. Seated cross-legged, dipping reed pens into black and red ink, copying scrolls with the focus of monks on double espresso. Their job is to replicate every text that comes in perfectly. Ships that dock in the harbor are politely relieved of any books on board. Those are rushed here, copied, and, if you're lucky, returned. If not, they keep the original and send back a pretty convincing dupe. Historical fact. The Library of Alexandria really did demand to inspect every scroll arriving in the city. It was state policy to build the collection through copying and occasionally stealing. It wasn't just a library. It was an information empire. You duck into a side room and find a chamber devoted to medicine. Scrolls line the walls. Surgeries from India, herbal cures from Egypt, anatomy notes from Greece that definitely overestimate how many stomachs a human has. But it's all here. Someone, somewhere, took the time to record it. And now it's stored, categorized, and possibly read by people in togas named Archibald. Odd fact? Some scrolls were written backwards on purpose. Not because of any ancient code, but because the scribes were practicing palindromes or just trying to confuse future historians. Outside, the city is bustling. Alexandria isn't just home to nerds and night owls. It's the capital of Egypt under the Ptolemies, a Greek dynasty ruling over a land of pyramids, sun gods, and clever engineers who figured out how to move water uphill. The streets are lined with merchants, philosophers, and suspiciously loud bread vendors. You cross the square, sandal straps flapping, and peek into the Serapeum, a secondary temple turned satellite library. More scrolls, more scholars. A bit more incense. You nod respectfully at a priest and try not to sneeze. Back at the main library, there's a seminar happening. A woman is lecturing about the properties of sound, why strings vibrate, why echo exists, and how to measure harmony in architecture. Her name is Hypatia. She's not born for another 500 years, but in your version of Alexandria, time's a bit flexible. It has to be. Otherwise, you'd miss out on the best parts. You pause at a tall shelf labeled Lost Works. The scrolls here are empty, blank. Symbolic placeholders for all the texts that vanished with the library works by Aristarchus, who proposed heliocentrism before Copernicus, by Berossus, who recorded Babylonian star lore, by hundreds of forgotten authors whose names have dissolved like ink in seawater. Historians still debate whether the library ever held all the world's knowledge, or if that's just poetic exaggeration. But standing here, listening to the faint rustle of papyrus and the gentle squeak of sandals. It sure feels like the center of the universe. A bell rings. Lunch? Lecture? Fire drill? Hard to say. You follow a crowd toward the inner gardens, where philosophers sit beneath date palms, arguing over ethics, astronomy, and whether numbers are real or just very tidy lies. You lean against a pillar and smile. You've made it. You're in the Library of Alexandria. And even if it only exists like this, in whispers, in dreams, in stories told by candlelight, you're still here. For now, you wake to the sound of shouting again. But it's not angry, it's excited. Someone's brought in a new manuscript, and half the scholars are already arguing over who gets to read it first. You shuffle into the hall still chewing a fig, just in time to see a servant rush past carrying a sealed scroll case as if it were the crown jewels. Apparently it's from India. Sanskrit, something about astronomy, or maybe surgery, hard to tell. The labeling system here is brilliant and confusing, kind of like a filing cabinet with delusions of grandeur. This is Alexandria, remember? Knowledge isn't just respected, it's hoarded like treasure. And the library? It's the vault. The scrolls keep coming. By sea, mostly. Every merchant ship that enters Alexandria's harbor gets inspected, not just for spices or wine, but for books. Sailors try hiding them in crates, under cloaks, even sewn into mattress stuffing. It never works. The clerks at the dock are trained better than customs agents at an airport with too much coffee. You watch them gently unroll a parchment, nod, and stamp it. Copy to Royal Library. It's not theft, technically. It's preservation. That's what they say, anyway. Historical fact. Ptolemy III issued a decree that any books found aboard ships must be brought to the library for copying. Originals were often kept and the copies returned. If you're thinking ancient academic piracy, you're absolutely right. Inside, the catalogers are in overdrive. You pass one who's muttering, "Callimachus was right, we need a second shelf for the herbal remedies alone," as he sorts through recipes for everything from bee sting ointment to philosophical hangovers. Odd fact. One scroll you find contains an entire section on dream interpretation. Apparently, if you dream of being chased by goats, it means you'll be wealthy unless the goat is wearing sandals. Then you're cursed. This is either divine wisdom or ancient comedy, and honestly, both are welcome. Everywhere you go, the energy crackles. The scholars argue constantly but politely, mostly. You overhear a debate in the garden between three men and a woman with a voice like polished stone. She's calmly dismantling their theory of geocentric planetary orbits with nothing but geometry, while sipping something suspiciously like honeyed beer. You don't dare interrupt. You duck into the cartography wing maps from Phoenicia to India, most of them wrong but stunningly so. One scroll shows the Nile flowing backward, another places Atlantis just off the coast of Sicily. You chuckle, but no one else is laughing. Because here, even mistakes are valuable. Even wrong ideas are worth writing down. Then you hear it. The lighthouse scrolls are here. You follow the crowd to a long corridor where engineers are huddled around diagrams of the pharaohs of Alexandria, that towering marvel that lights the harbor by night and guides ships to this hive of knowledge. The drawings show mechanisms involving mirrors, flame, and somehow salt. You lean in and whisper, "So where's the button to turn it off?" No one laughs, engineers. You sneak back into the scriptorium, where scribes are racing the sun to copy everything before the papyrus starts curling from humidity. Each scroll gets two scribes, one to read aloud, one to write. Occasionally they switch when their throats dry up or their wrists threaten mutiny. The head scribe, a man with the permanent posture of someone who's slept on scrolls for decades, waves you over. "You know Sanskrit?" "No," you say, "but I can make tea." He nods. "That'll do." Historians still debate whether the library was ever fully open to the public, or if it operated more like an elite university by invitation only. Either way, you're in now, so don't ask questions. You spend the afternoon in the zoology alcove staring at sketches of crocodiles, lions, and a bird that may or may not be a phoenix. You're not sure if it's symbolic or just wildly misidentified. Then again, you once thought a mongoose was a kind of fruit, so who are you to judge? There's a small crowd gathered around an elderly mathematician demonstrating how to measure the height of the moon, using a stick, a basin of water, and what might be leftover wine. He calls it practical geometry. You call it questionable science and excellent theater. The sun begins to set and torches are lit. Shadows flicker across the high walls. You pass a courtyard where students lie on their backs, watching the stars and scribbling notes on scraps of parchment. One turns to you and asks, "Do you believe the heavens are perfect?" You reply, "Not since I dropped a scroll into the bath this morning." He nods solemnly. Imperfection is part of truth. You walk the colonnade slowly, the sea breeze cooler now. The scent of wax, old ink, and ocean salt fills the air. You think about how this place has become an organism living, breathing, muttering in multiple languages at once. You wonder if anyone has ever read every scroll here. You doubt it, but someone is surely trying. You sit beneath a fig tree and open a random scroll. It's a poem about the wind, written in a dialect that predates Homer. You understand almost none of it. Still, it makes you feel something, like you're part of something massive and fleeting. You're standing in the library courtyard and something feels off. It's subtle at first, just a few nervous glances, a sudden quiet where there's usually endless chatter. Then someone brushes past you muttering, "They're burning ships at the quay." You blink. Ships? Fire? You drop your scroll. The news spreads fast. Julius Caesar has arrived dramatically, because of course he has. And somehow, in a move no one quite understands, his troops have set fire to their own docked fleet to stop the Egyptians from using it. Smart tactic for war. Terrible for waterfront property. And guess what's near the docks? Yep, the library. You rush through the streets, sandals slapping against stone trying to see the flames. You smell them first: wood, tar, rope, and something sharper, like the scent of old paper curling into smoke. Historical fact. During Caesar's siege of Alexandria in 48 BCE, part of the city burned, including, many believe, sections of the library or its storage annex. Whether the main building went up in smoke is debated, but something definitely burned, and it wasn't just dinner. By the time you get there, it's chaos. The port is a maze of screaming sailors, stampeding horses, and confused scholars cradling armfuls of scrolls like drowning men gripping driftwood. You grab what you can, 2, maybe 3 scrolls. You recognize one, a text on lunar eclipses, annotated in Greek and smudged with what you hope is ink. A guard waves a sword and yells for you to get back. You nod, drop a sarcastic "great day for literature," and retreat. The fire doesn't reach the main library building. Not this time, but it rattles people. There's a new awareness now. A sick, creeping sense that this whole glorious tower of knowledge is flammable. Mortal. You'd always known it in theory. Now you feel it. In the weeks after, security tightens. Some scrolls are moved, locked in vaults, or sent to satellite locations. Scholars whisper about making backup copies, but papyrus doesn't exactly upload to the cloud. And yet, the work continues. For a while, years pass. Kings die, philosophers age. The scrolls pile higher. And then, slowly, the next danger creeps in. Not fire, but friction. Not destruction, but division. You're in the square when it happens. A scuffle, shouting, robes torn. One of the temple priests is yelling at a philosopher, accusing him of heresy against the divine order. The philosopher, for his part, is holding a scroll like a shield and yelling back, "I used your calendar, you ungrateful goat." You try not to laugh. It's a serious moment. Sort of. The truth is, the rise of Christianity is changing Alexandria. The old gods are fading. Temples are being converted. And the library, well, it's becoming a bit of a battleground. Some thinkers welcome the change. Others, not so much. Historians still debate whether this period saw coordinated attacks on the library or just slow institutional erosion. One theory says the collection was abandoned. Another says it was still functioning just quietly and without state support. Either way, you start noticing a shift. Scrolls go missing, not stolen, just gone. Locked rooms remain locked. Students stop showing up. One morning you arrive to find the eastern wing blocked off with a stack of amphorae and a sign that just says, "Do not enter mold." You don't ask. And then comes the hardest blow. You're older now, still frequenting the library, but with more caution and fewer jokes. That's when you hear the news. Hypatia has been killed. Yes, that Hypatia. Mathematician, astronomer, philosopher, teacher of thousands. She was beloved by scholars, but targeted by zealots. Dragged from her chariot, murdered in the street. Her death sends shockwaves through Alexandria's academic world. And through you. Odd fact, Hypatia was reportedly killed with broken pottery shards. It's horrifying. But some historians think this detail was exaggerated to make the story even more shocking. Because yes, people have always added dramatic flair to horrifying truths. You visit the library less after that. The new crowd isn't interested in preserving scrolls. They're interested in power, purity, control. There's less curiosity and more condemnation, less debate and more dogma. You ask a clerk about a scroll you used to read. He shrugs. Too pagan, he says. We burned the shelf. You nod as if this makes sense. But it doesn't. Nothing does anymore. You start hiding scrolls. Just a few. You smuggle them home in baskets under olives or between layers of linen. You stash them in clay jars in your cellar alongside garlic and hope. You keep reading even as the city forgets how. Because you remember the old Alexandria, you lived it. You wandered its marble halls and argued about comets and watched candlelight flicker off 1,000 shelves. And even if it's fading now, even if the scrolls crumble and the walls crack and the scholars vanish, you know what it was. And no one can take that from you. The silence is different now. Not peaceful, not meditative. Just empty. You sit on the same marble bench you always did, beneath the same fig tree. But the courtyard is quiet. Too quiet. The gentle murmurs of scholars, the rustle of scrolls, the endless cascade of questions, that music of minds. Gone. No debates. No laughter. Just wind, pigeons, and the soft sigh of a city forgetting itself. You rise and walk the colonnade, each echo of your steps a little louder than it should be. The main hall, once bursting with scribes, now smells of dust and disuse. The great shelves that towered like wooden cliffs have thinned. Whole rows stand bare with ghostly outlines where scrolls once rested. A forgotten inkpot rests on a ledge, its contents hardened like a black scab. You touch it and it flakes apart in your fingers. You're not sure when the library truly started dying. Was it when Caesar's fire kissed the edges of the collection? When the tides of religion turned? When politics wormed their way into parchment? Or was it quieter than all that? No flames, no riots, just neglect. Historians still debate whether the library's destruction was sudden or slow. Some blame Caesar, others the Christians, still others the Muslims centuries later. But there's a growing thought, maybe it wasn't destroyed. Maybe it was forgotten. Libraries don't always die in flames. Sometimes they just starve. You pass a doorway that used to lead to the astronomy wing. Now it leads to storage. The shelves are filled with cracked amphorae and unused oil lamps. You pause beside one labeled in faint Greek. It reads simply, Lunar Theory Fragment. You peek inside. Nothing. Back in the courtyard, a few scattered students still come and go, but they don't stay. They sit on the steps, carve initials into stone columns, and speak of things like coinage and trade routes. Useful maybe, but not wonder, not magic. You remember when someone once told you that knowledge was the closest thing humans had to divinity, that inside every scroll was a whisper of something eternal. You believed it then. You still want to believe it now. You try to read. You do. You unroll a surviving scroll, something about plant properties in river marshes, but the words don't hold you like they used to. Not because they've lost their power, but because you're one of the last who remembers their power. You sigh, you're not even that old. But the scrolls feel ancient in your hands, like they're disintegrating faster just from the weight of your disappointment. Odd fact, there was once a scroll in the library that described a device to make statues speak using pipes and steam pressure. Early animatronics, basically. One philosopher called it unholy wizardry. Another called it a waste of perfectly good steam. Yet another tried to patent it, then disappeared mysteriously. You laugh a little remembering that. But it fades quickly. Because the scrolls that filled this place over 500,000 by some estimates, they're mostly gone. Some scattered. Some looted, some reused, scraped or burned to warm chilly fingers on cold Alexandria nights. And the worst part? You don't even know what you're missing. There could have been cures. Maps, languages, lost epics, secret histories, whole worlds, all gone like smoke rising from an extinguished candle. And nobody wrote down the scent. So here you are. One of the last, a ghost haunting the library even while still alive. You move through the room slowly, like walking through a memory. The air is dry, too dry. Without the bodies, the breath, the ink and wax and sweat, the atmosphere has changed. The library used to be alive. Now it's a husk. A shell. You pause at the exit. The sea is just beyond the courtyard now, shining blue and unconcerned. It rolls and crashes like it always has. Somewhere out there, ships still sail. Some may carry books. Some may carry war. And in a few hundred years, they'll say the library burned. That someone destroyed it. That one singular event wiped it clean from history like a scroll too brittle to read. But you'll know better. You'll know it died slower, softer, like a mind going quiet, like a brilliant thought slipping out of reach before it could be written down. You take one last look around. The gold inlays are still there, faint chipped but present. The pillars still stand, proud and weathered. The stone floor is worn smooth by centuries of restless feet. There's beauty in it still, not the kind that shouts, the kind that lingers. You leave quietly like a scholar slipping out of a lecture already thinking about what comes next. Because if the library taught you anything, it's this: knowledge never truly dies. It just waits to be rediscovered. Word count, 1 through 85. Waiting for continue band and I. Continue ChatGPT and I. Section mime, you don't visit the library anymore. Eco. Not because you've forgotten it, but because you carry it now. It walks with you through Alexandria's sun-bleached streets, lingers in the echo of water cellars shouting beneath the stone aqueducts, and flutters through the linen curtains in your tiny second-floor room that smells of dried ink, olives, and a little bit of melancholy. It's been years. Decades, maybe. You still remember how the columns gleamed in the morning when the light hit them just right. You remember the scrolls stacked taller than your reach. You remember the debates, the laughter, the passionate arguments over whether Atlantis was real, or if someone had just spilled wine on a map and improvised. But now the library's gone. Truly gone, and yet you still wake up dreaming of it. Sometimes you think you see flashes of its soul in strange places. A mosaic tucked into the floor of a bakery, a scrap of parchment used to wrap figs, a dusty corner of a trader's cart where a rolled-up scroll peeks out like it's holding its breath. You ask, always. Sometimes they let you peek. Sometimes the scrolls are blank. Sometimes they're grocery lists. And sometimes rarely you find something ancient. A poem, a treatise, a question. One day you're walking the port, pretending not to limp. Your knees are frankly fed up with time. When you meet a traveler from Rhodes, he's young, bright-eyed, and carrying a stack of parchments like they're gold. You stop him, talk shop. And before you know it, you're back in the rhythm debating astronomy, measuring the shadows with a stick, laughing over the misinterpretation of a poorly drawn cow that someone once claimed was a map of the heavens. He asks where you studied. You hesitate, then say, the library. His eyes light up. The library? You nod. He doesn't ask if it burned, or when, or how. He asks, what was it like? You pause, trying to sum up a galaxy of knowledge, a sanctuary of ideas, a world made from ink and longing. It was loud, you say first, smiling. Then, it was endless. He leans in. What did it teach you? You answer without thinking. That curiosity is dangerous, and also sacred. You both laugh. Then fall quiet. Historical fact. By the time the Library of Alexandria had vanished from history, other great libraries had risen like those in Constantinople, Baghdad, and Timbuktu. But none carried the same mythic gravity. Alexandria was never just about scrolls. It was about the dream that all human knowledge could be gathered in one place. You walk along the harbor together. The wind is sharp. The seagulls shout like philosophers with wing envy. Eventually he leaves off to Antioch, maybe Athens. You're not sure, but he carries your stories with him now, like a traveling shelf. That night, you sit by a flickering lamp and open one of your hidden scrolls. It's in terrible condition, faded, warped, half-written in a dialect no one speaks anymore. But it's yours. Odd fact, one scroll discovered centuries later was just a shopping list. But scribbled in the margins? An original quote from Menander, time is the wisest counselor. Sometimes wisdom hides in grocery runs. You spend hours with the scroll, not reading it, just being with it. You run your fingers across the ink strokes. You breathe in the faint must of centuries. You remember how knowledge once felt like fire in flight. You remember how it made you feel small in the best way. You remember that it mattered, and you wonder who will remember you. Maybe someone will. Maybe they already do. Maybe your stories have threaded into others, braided into the lineage of curious minds who build libraries in basements and ask dangerous questions under blankets with flashlights. Maybe the library never needed to last forever. Maybe it only needed to happen once. Because you were there. You witnessed it. You carried it. And even now, as your lamp gutters low and the shadows stretch long across the walls, You can still feel it, warm as sunlit stone, alive as parchment under a steady hand, waiting to be written again. The Library of Alexandria was never just a building. It was a dream, a bold, brilliant, and possibly impossible one. Imagine a place where every question had a scroll, every scroll had a guardian, and curiosity wasn't just encouraged, it was sacred. You walked its halls. You saw the knowledge shimmer under torchlight. You witnessed astronomers guess the shape of the cosmos, and mathematicians laugh at their own impossible formulas. You heard ideas spoken aloud for the first time, and felt the crackle of history being written in real time. And then it slipped away, not with one great blaze, but with silence, neglect, time. But you were there. You remember. And even if the scrolls turn to ash, their words still whisper through you. That's the legacy. Not the parchment, not the bricks, but the people who kept asking questions, who carried the flame, who didn't give up when the world stopped listening. Maybe we'll never know how many scrolls were lost. Maybe we'll never read what was written on them. But the dream they held, that survives in you. So when you ask your next big question, when you open a book or share a story or teach someone something that makes their eyes light up, that's Alexandria. Still burning, still beautiful.